With a game that's as big as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, things can get overwhelming very fast. That's why after about 80 hours with the game, I've put together some of the most helpful tips for those who might be picking it up for the first time. We'll be avoiding any story spoilers, but there is a chance I show off areas, enemies, weapons, abilities, items, outfits, and more you might not have seen yet. So if you care about that sort of thing, proceed at your own risk. With that out of the way, let's get right into tip number 1, rush to get clothing. As much as I like Link's default outfit in this game, you're not going to want to stay in it for very long. New clothing items will increase your defense in combat, and even more importantly, will help shield you from harmful elements. Each major region of Hyrule has some sort of clothing item to help with the weather. For example, buying the Snow Quill set in Rito Village will prevent you from taking damage in the extreme cold. They're expensive, but prioritize getting at least one piece of each regional set. That should protect you enough from the elements and prevent having to constantly stop and cook meals to get the same effect. Next, if you have the rupees, buy arrows at every chance you get. It will always be worth it. Having a bow and arrow for ranged attacks is so useful, and because of this, your quiver can run out quickly. Make sure you're picking up arrows whenever you see them lying around. And at every stable, search for Beetle. If you buy out his stock, he'll be very happy, and you'll be even happier having hundreds of arrows to shoot around freely. Now, the next few tips I'm going to give are about a very special part of the game, so I'm giving you one more chance to leave the video now if you want to go in completely blind. For tip 3, I'm talking about the depths, Hyrule's underground, and the best way you can create light down there so you can see what's going on. As you might have figured out already, that's by using bright bloom seeds, which can be picked up in just about every one of the game's caves. I don't know why, but when I first started in the depths, I thought you had to fuse bright bloom seeds to arrows, and that was the only way to get light from them. This to me is now completely crazy, because all you actually have to do is hold down the right trigger, press up on the D-pad, and select a bright bloom seed from your inventory to throw one. No arrows needed. Maybe this tip is too obvious, but it's a mistake I made at first, so I thought I'd include it here. Once I started throwing seeds directly from my hand, I saved a ton of arrows that were previously wasted. We're staying in the depths for tip number 4, and that's to make sure you know that each light root you find there actually corresponds with a shrine on the surface. Since roots are pretty easy to spot in the pitch darkness, you'll typically find them a lot easier. So if you find a root in the depths, remember to pull up your map, switch to Hyrule's surface, and place a mark on your location to check back on later when you emerge above ground. And speaking of marking your map, that's exactly what my next tip is going to be. If you're playing this game without a guide, it's going to be tough to remember what you saw and where at any given time. That's why devising a system to help you remember interesting locations or landmarks is going to be a lifesaver. I like to place skull marks on spots where tough enemies spawn, a leaf on any Korok puzzles I can't be bothered to do in the current moment, and diamond markers on places where there's a shrine of light I haven't yet completed. That's what makes sense to me, but everyone has their own methods. Sticking with another quick map tip for number 6, every one of Hyrule's caves has an elusive creature inside called a bubble frog. These frogs drop items called bubble gems, which can be traded to a certain character for unique rewards. Caves will be displayed on your map, and if it's showing a checkmark symbol on it, that means you already found its frog and collected its bubble gem. So even if you think you already completely cleared out a cave, if it's not checked off on your map, then you missed a gem inside. Tip number 7 is to always be holding a rock-fused weapon, at least while your resources are still limited. Especially early game, it's usually better to use up a simple weapon to bash rocks and collect zonite, rather than blowing your limited supply of bomb flowers clearing out a cave. Yeah, it's a bit slower, but it is a better use of resources when you're first starting out. I usually kept 1 to 2 weapons fused with the boulder to help me avoid killing the durability of my good weapons while mining. Moving on to what's maybe the most important tip for combat, don't forget to fuse monster parts to your basic weapons. I went for way too long not doing this, and wondered why I was barely doing damage to some enemies. There's nothing else you're going to want to save these monster drops for. So if you have things like the Lizalfos horn or Boss Bokoblin horn in your inventory, use Fuse to combine them with your weapons for a huge damage increase. Tip number 9 is to use your arm abilities in combat. This is easy to forget, but can really make the difference against some of the game's tougher enemies. For example, Recall can help turn the tables on just about any enemy who's shooting projectiles. Stop time and then reverse a Battle Talus's boulder right back at them. And did you know you can use Ultra Hand to pull apart Flux constructs? Try to get a grip on its vulnerable green core. Pulling that away will split the construct apart, making the fight significantly easier. Maybe you're having a hard time landing a hit on a flying enemy. Then fuse a key sideball to your arrow to create a homing missile. There's so much depth to this game's combat options. So next time a particular enemy is giving you trouble, remember that there's usually a creative solution to beat them using Link's new powers. And for the last tip, I'm going to give you a couple easy but super effective machine builds using Ultra Hand. These have come in handy many times over the course of my playthrough. Take for example the basic hovering machine. This one's simple and quick. All you need is 3 fans, and on a flat surface attach them face down in a triangle formation. Stand directly in the middle and activate them for quick and easy upward flight. Next is creating a wing that can glide from anywhere, not just rails. That's as simple as taking a cart, attaching the wing directly on top, and then adding a source of power, either a fan or a rocket on the top. The power source will make the cart roll forward, and once it clears a cliff, the wing will take over and you'll start to glide like normal. Last but not least is building a spring tower, which is another useful way to get vertical height. Springs have a climbable surface, and multiple can be stacked on top of one another. So make a large stack of springs, climb up to the very top, and let the spring tower launch Link to new heights. It's not always pretty, but it works. If you have any cool or useful builds that you discovered, make sure to leave them in the comments below. If you found this guide useful, make sure to share it since it just might help someone else. And as always, thanks for watching.